So far in this series, we've covered how to use BFM when you're in an offensive or defensive position. But what about when neither you or your opponent has the advantage? That's called high aspect BFM, and it's what we'll be covering as we wrap up this series. The name high aspect might sound confusing at first, but if you remember back to our definitions from this video, we measure our aspect off of the bandit's tail. So when we're directly behind the bandit, we're at 0 degrees of aspect, and 180 off the bandit's nose. So when we're nose to nose, then both aircraft are presenting a high aspect. There are two reasons why you might end up in a high aspect fight. At the conclusion of an intercept, the bandit could turn his nose in your direction, leading to a high aspect pass, which we call the merge. The other reason is if you made a BFM mistake, which led to the loss of your offensive position. Regardless of the reason, there are some things we can do to improve our posture and get onto an offensive footing. Our tactics will vary based on which of the three parts of a high aspect fight we're in. There will be things you can do to set up a winning merge. You'll also want to know how to recognize and win a one-circle fight. And you should know what to do in a two-circle fight. We'll cover what exactly one and two-circle fights are later on in this series. But first, we need to go over how you set up for high aspect BFM. In earlier videos, we went over the perch setup, but that's not something we can use for high aspect. Perch setups always place one aircraft in a position of advantage. What we want is for both aircraft to be neutral. For that, we'll use the butterfly setup. Here's what a butterfly setup looks like. You start here at a line abreast formation. Once you're both ready, call check away and start a mil-power 30-degree turn away from the bandit. Starting this exercise at 400 knots, we'll fly this leg for about 8 or 9 seconds, or to the limits of visual range, whichever comes first. At this point, call turn in, fights on. You can expect to be over 2 miles apart at this point, which is going to be at the limits of visual range for a lot of people. Bear in mind that at this point, the bandit is going to be a tiny black speck. If it looks like you might lose visual, then keep your focus outside the cockpit on the bandit and call padlocked. This lets your wingman know that you can't focus on your instruments without losing sight. Follow the Air Force's advice and do not look in the cockpit during the turn-in. Afterwards, the bandit will get closer and spotting should get easier. Now there are a couple things we can do to build an advantage ahead of the actual merge. We want to build turning room and execute a lead turn. If we mirror the bandit's turn exactly, we won't have any turning room at all. What we need to do is build some TR, and we do that during our check away turn. Since turning room can be built vertically, not just horizontally, we can build vertical TR with a climb or descent. You can adjust your throttle as needed during this change of altitude to match the speed you want to have at the merge. Also keep in mind that as you get further from the bandit, you will spend less time looking at your instruments and more time looking outside to maintain tally. When deciding if you want to climb or descend, the most important and therefore overriding factor is ease of tally for the fighter and attempting to deny the bandit the tally. This means using the environment to your advantage. Putting the bandit between you and a cloud makes it easier to keep tally. If you can get between the bandit and the sun, that will make his job much harder. Also, remember that most people tend to scan near the horizon, so you don't want to stay at the same altitude as the bandit. Unless you plan on flying directly under or over the bandit, then you're going to need some horizontal turning room too. When we're building vertical TR, we have the option of going up or down. But with lateral TR, we only have the option of turning inside the bandit's turn circle. We can't go to the outside. As the Air Force explains, if the fighter floats to the outside, there won't be enough time or range to gain TR prior to the merge. That's because this wider turn will take longer, which gives the bandit more time to fly the straightaway portion of the butterfly. The longer you take to make this final turn, the more the merge point is going to move in this direction. In a real fight, the bandit will take every shortcut possible to get inside your turn circle. So you should practice to do the same with your best sustained rate turn here in the butterfly. With all of this turning room built up, we should be in a position to cash it in for a turn that puts us in an offensive position. That turn is called the lead turn. When I see people online doing high aspect BFM, I see a lot of merges that look like this. These fighters don't begin their turn until they pass the 3-9 line of the other jet. That might work in a competitive setting where the main concern is fairness. But in a real fight, the enemy is not going to play fair with you. By turning earlier with the lead turn, you can start building an angular advantage on an opponent before the first pass. If you remember back to our EM diagram, every second of turn at our sustained rate is over 10 degrees of advantage that the bandit is going to have to make up. Getting just 2 seconds ahead of the bandit can get you far enough ahead that a bandit in the same aircraft can't ever catch up. But there's another reason why we want to use a lead turn. Not every aircraft is going to turn on us. It could be that we're ending an intercept with the civilian plane, or the bandit just hasn't seen us yet. Remember, we're trying to approach the merge while denying a tally to the bandit. In either case, we can use the lead turn to put us right on the tail of our target. This is called a stern conversion. If you do it correctly, you'll arrive on your target 6 o'clock within gun range and ready to take a shot. But there are a couple things that can go wrong and potentially make your situation worse. If you execute your lead turn too late, you'll fall behind the bandit and end up having to spend extra fuel and time to get within range. And that's time for a bandit to notice you and start giving you BFM problems. Turning too early has its own set of problems. Crossing inside the bandit's turn radius will allow the bandit the opportunity for a reversal and give up the advantage gained in the lead turn. Just like with offensive BFM, we have a visual cue to let us know when it's time to turn. For a left side pass, it will be a rapidly increasing LOS rate from 11 to 10 o'clock. This would be from 1 to 2 o'clock for a right side pass. For reference, 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock are just inside the canopy bow. The most common error here is a late lead turn. As the manual states, if in doubt, start the lead turn early. However, do not turn in front of the bandit. During your lead turn, if you find that you started it too late, there isn't much you can do to fix it. You'll know you turned late when you see the bandit drifting aft on the canopy. You've just given yourself a BFM problem to deal with. But in an early lead turn, you'll see the opposite. The bandit's LOS rate on the canopy will slow down, freeze entirely, and then drift under the nose. In this case, there is something you can do. Just ease off the G momentarily to get it moving again. Once you've corrected, you should see the on-time sight picture with the bandit captured inside the canopy bow. In these images, we see our lead turn depicted in 2 dimensions. But high aspect BFM happens in 3 dimensions. So you should set up enough turning room both vertically and laterally in your approach to the merge. Then all you have to do is place your plane of motion on the bandit. This typically means your lift vector will be slightly above the bandit. That's it. Of course, estimating the correct amount of turning room only comes through practice. It's like a muscle that needs to be exercised to get strong. So if you haven't done so already, then I recommend you go through the exercises presented in these videos. Even if you're off by a little in your estimation of TR, the skills you pick up from these exercises will help you get to the right place. Since we're aiming to build some vertical TR in our approach to the merge, it means a change in altitude. That also means a change in energy state. We need to manage that energy so we don't overshoot the bandit or fall behind during the stern conversion. The Air Force has a tool to help with that, which is called the energy atom. It's a quick way to figure out what your speed should be so you end up right at the bandit speed at the conclusion of the lead turn. What it's telling us is that if we were going for a purely vertical, high to low turn, we would want to start at 300 knots. That's because we're going to pick up about 100 knots in speed as we descend on the bandit in the middle. At the opposite end, we see that we'll need 500 knots because we'll lose 100 knots of speed in the climb. And of course, at the bandit's altitude, we can execute a sustained rate turn right at the bandit's airspeed. Just remember that these numbers are for a 400 knot bandit. They will need to be adjusted if you decide to change that speed. Also, don't forget that the quickest way to build speed outside of a dive is to unload your jet while not making any turns. You won't have much time between fights on and the merge, so make the best use of those seconds. That's it for lead turns. Now it's time to practice them. For this exercise, we're going to use the butterfly setup we just went over. Start at line abreast, and when both pilots are ready, lead will call check away. Set mill power and turn 30 degrees away from the other aircraft. After about 8 or 9 seconds, you should be at least 2 nautical miles apart. Keep your eyes on the bandit, and if you're at the limits of visual range, call padlocked. Next, lead will call turn in, fights on, and both jets will turn towards each other. If you started flying north on the compass, this should be easy. You can just get on the east or west heading to face towards the other aircraft. The bandit will then maintain brief altitude and airspeed, but the fighter is free to change either to build turning room. Just for this exercise, the bandit won't maneuver after the merge. This is so that the fighter can practice making a stern conversion on an unaware, non-maneuvering aircraft. This is something that can happen in real life. A bandit that only has a radar spike, GCI instructions, or a data link to work with only has a rough idea of where you are. That's not enough to maneuver on you in BFM. If you properly denied a tally to the bandit, you'll have an opportunity for a stern conversion. Later on, we'll introduce a maneuvering bandit. But since there's a lot to learn here for the butterfly setup and the lead turn, we want to focus on just those 2 areas for this exercise. The goal here will be for the fighter to end up on the bandit 6 o'clock within gun range, which is 2,500 feet or less. At that range, the bandit's wingspan fits between 2 of these lines in the fighter's gun sight. It's also between 0.4 and 0.5 miles if you have labels turned on. You'll probably notice right away that after the turn-in, there isn't a lot of time before you need to execute a lead turn. This is true in the real-life training too, where even after a well-executed turn-in, you won't have longer than 1 to 2 seconds prior to executing the lead turn. But that's an important part of the learning process. Just like in a real dogfight, there won't be a lot of time to figure out when to turn. This exercise will also let you experience some of the common errors of a bad lead turn. If you turn too early or you don't have enough turning room, you'll give the bandit a reversal picture. Turning too late or without enough speed will place you outside of gun range. It'll also leave you with a bandit that now has an energy advantage and an opportunity to escape. This is also what you're likely to see if you float to the outside before the lead turn. Once you get the hang of estimating TR, lead turn cues, and setting the right speed, you'll nail the stern conversion every time. Now let's do a quick recap. We practice high-aspect BFM with the butterfly setup. Starting at line abreast and a pre-briefed altitude and airspeed, we make a 30-degree check turn away from each other. Once we reach approximately 2 nautical miles or the limits of visual range, we'll turn in with a call of turn in, fights on. Throughout all this, the fighter should begin the process of building turning room by either climbing or descending and getting to the inside at the turn in. After this point, watch for your lead turn cues. In a left-to-left pass, that will be a rapid increase in aft LOS rate from 11 to 10 o'clock. Use the energy atom to figure out your starting airspeed and then set your plane of motion on the bandit. With the proper setup, you just need to keep your plane of motion on the bandit and you should end up on his 6 with the gun solution. You'll want to practice this setup until it becomes instinct. That instinct will help out when we face a maneuvering bandit in the upcoming videos on 1 and 2 circle fights. Thanks for taking the time to watch this and good luck with your training.